everyone. Thanks for joining us today for ThriveCAST. I wanted to welcome today's guest, Gabe Lett. He is a true veteran of AEC marketing with more than 20 years of experience, really shaping the industry. Gabe is the Chief Marketing Officer at Prairie Engineers and also a published author and a sought-after speaker. So with his book, the AEC Professional's Guidebook, and his background as a licensed professional counselor, Gabe really blends that strategy and psychology to empower design and construction professionals. So I'm so happy to have you as a guest today, Gabe. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your firm?
Sure, I'd love to. And it's kind of funny as when you introduce people, sometimes you go through the list of things that you're saying and you're like, am I really that? Is that really who I am? And the word that stuck out to me today was veteran, because I don't know if you can tell, I got more gray in my beard. So I guess that, comes with the veteran status.
Yeah.
But yeah, just maybe a little bit about me. I've grown up and been in the same city my whole life in Joplin, Missouri, except for 4 years of college. So I'm literally a hometown boy. And I've served 4
That's
different
awesome.
engineering firms. Yeah. The first one was my dad's. He was a civil engineer. And then I've gone on to serve several others. And the engineering firm I'm currently with is Prairie Engineers. And Prairie is a multidisciplined firm based out of Illinois, but really we have people kind of all over the country. And this is the first time I've worked for a company that has really embraced remote workers and flexible work schedules. So I get to sit here in Joplin, Missouri, and serve a company that's in Illinois. So that's kind of fun.
Isn't that awesome? Like, I don't know if that switch just happened post-COVID, but I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm never stepping foot back into an office, not ever again. I love working from home and having that flexibility. I know some people kind of take advantage of it and decide to go, mess around and play hooky. But if you're dedicated and you're diligent, I mean, it's the best freedom in the world and super fulfilling. I can hear that when you say when you work remotely. It looks like you're in an office. Are you?
I actually am, yeah. So I did ask when I took the job, I did want to have some office space lease. So I work out of that office probably 80% of the time. But
Okay.
every once in a while, when it's convenient for me, I'll stay home and work from home. I have a little station at home that I can work from as well. But that's just a personal preference. I like to be away from home. I like home and work to be separate as much as possible. That's just me.
Yeah, I think everybody's a little bit different, right? I have chaos around me all the time with dogs and kids and running around, and I'm okay to be able to differentiate those two, even though the chaos ensues throughout the course of the day. So I get it. Whatever floats your boat, right? Whatever floats your boat.
I don't know if it's the difference between your female brain and my male brain or what it is, but I cannot do that. I cannot. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's definitely a multitasking super skill. So yeah, sometimes people have it and sometimes we don't. So I totally respect that. So let's talk about your current engineering firm. What is their core service? What do they do? Because you said you're multidisciplinary. So what is it that you guys really do? And where in the country do you focus a lot of your work?
Okay, so what we do and where we do it, we do a lot of engineering. We have scientists who do a lot of environmental engineering, and we also have land surveyors. Now, of those folks that we have on our team, and we're a little over 100 people total, we have 5 specific disciplines that we focus a lot of our services on. I mentioned one, which is natural resources or environmental engineering. We also have structural engineering, and that mainly focuses in like special structures, not necessarily, we can do building structural, but we don't really focus on that. It's stuff like dams and levees, water resource structures, and things like that. Then we have our civil engineering discipline who does what I just mentioned. They'll do water resource work, such as stormwater and drainage. They'll do transportation work. They'll do site development work, kind of a broad stroke there. Then we have an MEP team, which does mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering for facilities. And then we have our land surveying and mapping, which we kind of lump as our geospatial discipline. So those are the kind of 5 different categories of work. And then we serve 4 different markets with those different disciplines. So those 4 markets would be the federal market, so Army Corps of Engineer districts and other federal agencies like U.S. Fish and Wildlife or Department of Agriculture and places like that. Then we have a state, local, and education market. We just acronize that as SLED. And that's universities, state agencies, like the National Guard, places like that. So still big government focus. Our third market would be utilities and industry. So that's the only one that has more of a private base in it. So like investor-owned utilities, like power companies and things, and then just general industrial services. So then we have our fourth market, which would be, I don't know why I'm blanking. You're going to have to edit this part.
Road. Are you guys into road and construction?
Yeah,
And
DOT. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
So the
he's
fourth
covered
market,
everything.
yeah, the fourth market is DOT, which we serve different state departments of transportation.
So, I mean, burning question, are you in charge of all of those proposals that go out to bid on work?
My goodness, no way. So I have a team of 4 other people that serve with me, and 2 of those specifically are tasked with a lot of the proposal development work. Although any of us could serve in that capacity and work on proposals, really 2 are the primary that do most of the proposal work. And unlike a lot of other firms, at least the ones I've served and others that I've talked to, our technical professionals get pretty engaged in that process. They
Okay.
don't really focus. Well, the marketing team does do the heaviest lift, but the burden is shouldered pretty well with our technical folks and our market leaders. So there's a whole team effort when it comes to proposal development.
Yeah, it's a beast. I worked at an engineering AEC firm and we pumped out about 300 proposals a year. It was
My, ooh,
madness. It was madness.
yeah,
So I can fully empathize with your team that oversees all of that. It's a huge chunk of business development. I mean, and maybe that's something that we can really talk about is how do you guys get your business? Is it strictly through proposals and competitive bids, or is it returning customers, or what does that look like for you guys?
yeah. That's a great question, and of course, each market is a little different, right? So like how an investor-owned power utility, how you interact with them and how you win work with them looks a lot different than, say, the Illinois Department of Transportation, which also looks a lot different than, say, the New Mexico, Army Corps of Engineers. So it's like now in the federal space, a lot of those proposals are very tailored and specific to the standard form 330 or the SF 330.
Oh, yeah.
And so everybody, cranks those out, and it's very
Yep.
similar in its formatting and styling and what you do. But then you get out of that, every state is going to have its own way of procuring work, whether it's the DOT or state facilities. So like there's little nuances to all of it. Sometimes it's all online. Sometimes, it's very specific and regimented, and other times it's pretty free and open. So, and then to get back to the core of your question, really the business development side of it comes still from relationship building, getting
Yeah.
to know people. I'm a huge proponent that most owners of projects are about 90%, if not 100%, already convinced as to who they're going to select
Yeah.
before the proposal ever hits their desk, the
Yeah.
response to their proposal. So with that in mind, I mean, sometimes that can be discouraging to marketing and proposal teams because they think I put all this effort and work and hours of sweat and blood and tears into a proposal, and you're telling me that it has very little to do with whether we win or not. And unfortunately, yes,
Yeah, you're priming the
it just
pump,
doesn't.
right? Like
It just
that
doesn't.
is that's just how it goes. Like you have to play that game. You have to. And so whether you're primed for the work or not, you still need to show face in the industry to make sure that you could be thought about later for something else that maybe might be coming down the pipeline. So I get it. And I mean,
And there are certain agencies that they require you. to respond, even if you know you're not getting selected, because if you don't respond, it kind of kicks you out for the next round of RFQs and RFPs. So it's like there is a game that has to be played at times where you're kind of forced into a situation where you have to respond and develop proposals for things that you really aren't going to win. But honestly, I've been a pretty big proponent over the last few years of really trying to minimize that. And well, you say, how do you do that? Well, if enough folks within the industry stop playing the game, then the game shuts down. Now that's a big
Oh,
statement, right?
that is a bold statement.
Yeah. But if we're tired of the procurement games that our clients are playing with us, then at some point you have to get off that train. You have to be willing to take a risk and say, we're just this this costs our company so much time and money and energy that it's just silly, to continue to fight for things that we cannot win. That's a whole nother topic, probably for a whole nother
Hey,
episode, but yeah.
yeah, I fully get it. So tell me about a little bit about your AEC Professionals Guidebook. I mean, I have not read it. I haven't looked at it. So what drove you to write something like this? Because I can only imagine it has facets of that proposal process peppered in
Sure.
somewhere.
Sure. Yeah. So the story behind this book, and it's always fascinating because I tell people the book wrote itself, and people always give me that weird look like, yeah, whatever, you're just yanking my chain, whatever. But here's how that happened. The firm that I was with previous to this one, admittedly, they themselves would tell you they were behind in their marketing game. They needed to get caught up. And so I thought of a number of different ways to try to just generally bring up the marketing acumen of the firm as a whole. And there was 150 people, so it was a decently sized firm and a pretty heavy lift to try to move the needle of getting people a little more marketing savvy. So what I decided to do is write a Monday marketing email every Monday morning that just tackled a specific little topic. I usually try to keep it 300 or 400 words or less, just trying to bring their education and their training level up when it comes to marketing and business development. Now, the first one that I ever did, and you'll love this because you were in marketing and you've done proposal work.
Yeah.
The very first Monday morning email that I wrote was why we don't double space after a period anymore. And you would think that I had started World War III in the office that day, because the rest
Yeah.
of the day, it was people who were double spaced people and non-double spaced people. And they were arguing back and forth all day long about it. But I knew I had hit a nerve, a good nerve. I mean, I knew I had got the attention of people. And for anybody who may be watching or listening, the reason we don't double space after a period anymore is because we don't produce content on typewriters anymore.
That's
Now, if
right.
you're still producing content on a typewriter, then by all means, double space. But if you're in a word processing software, no matter what your word processing software is, that software takes care of the spacing of your letters and sentences for you. So you don't have to double space anymore.
I love that. I love that. That's like the Oxford comma conversation. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you
right.
guys write in AP style writing, but the Oxford comma is very controversial, and either
Yes, it
you love
is.
it or you hate it. And
Right.
I mean, again, when I was working on putting proposals together for all of these jobs that we were bidding, we had to set a precedence, right? And the writing just couldn't include an Oxford comma. So that was it. That was what we decided. That's what we adopted. And let me tell you, like, getting everybody on board was a difficult task, was a difficult task.
Right.
Thank
Right.
goodness marketing was the final eyes, so I could always modify that Oxford comma, but it's very controversial. I totally understand that. That's really
So with
funny
the
that you,
success of that one, I continued to write. I wrote about cross marketing. I wrote about inbound and outbound marketing. I wrote about how to prepare for a good business development lunch. I mean, I just kept writing all these different tips. So one day a colleague said, and I was like over 100 of these, that I had written over several years. And a colleague said, "Hey, have you ever thought about publishing any of these?" And that was totally new to me. I had never I mean, I was just trying to serve my company,
Right.
So I actually did. I went through and I picked out 70 of the ones that I thought were the best and the strongest of those tips, and I published them into the AEC Professionals Guidebook. So that's how the book came to be. And
That's
of course, I
awesome.
rewrote it to be more for a book rather than just Monday morning emails. And I put little challenges at the end of each lesson, just something to think about or something you could do that week, to move that needle of your marketing expertise a little bit. So, yep, that's where it came from.
So it's titled the AEC Professionals Guidebook, right? Is it
Correct.
on Amazon? Where can you
It
get it?
is. Yep,
Okay.
most people are buying it on Amazon. I do have a blog called the AECguide.com. So the
Okay.
AECguide.com. And so I blog on that pretty regularly, and you could buy it off of that site as well from me. And I sign it. If you buy it from Amazon, you don't get it signed. If you buy it from me, you get it signed. That's
You
the
get a
only
sign.
difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, that signature could be worth, a lot of money in the future. So why not? Like, I'd rather just buy it from you. And then you get all the rewards, right? So I would imagine going through you is better
Yeah, I do
anyway.
make a few more dollars on the ones that I sell personally, but that, you don't write a book to make money. Anybody who's ever written a book, especially, that's in consulting or professional services or whatever, you never write a book to make money. You write it to get your ideas out there and to serve your industry or to serve your profession.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So I want to talk about something that prior to us actually recording this podcast, we had a little bit of a discussion about, content marketing and thought leadership. And given your insights on building trust through content marketing, how are you doing that at Prairie Engineers and leveraging kind of that thought leadership to really engage clients and stakeholders?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's a great question, and there's so many different ways to answer it. And I would hope that if we had this conversation a year from now, that Prairie would be doing some new and novel things to get our content thought leadership out into the marketplace. But for right now, probably one of the more exciting things that we started to do is every other Wednesday, we have what we call a Prairie Views LinkedIn Live program. And so we're using LinkedIn as our platform, and we're doing quick little 15-minute interviews of our employees on LinkedIn Live, and we just call it Prairie Views. And there's some stuff in there about their jobs and about what they do and the kind of projects they work on, but there's also stuff in those interviews that are just more personal, more human. I found out our natural resources leader, Marina Osher is her name, has adopted 9 dogs that were needing adopted because they were in bad shape. So it's like I found this really cool thing out about her as a person that's outside of her work as a natural resources, environmental scientist. And so you find out little bits and pieces. And so what that does is and it continues to live. I mean, anyone who's not on the live broadcast, it still lives on LinkedIn. We put it on our YouTube channel. And anyone can go and watch any of those episodes that they want. And like I said, they're 15 minutes, so you kind of keep them short and to the point. And so that's one avenue. Another avenue is some different articles that we write that we'll post on LinkedIn. We have not started a professional blog yet attached to our website, but that's something in the works where we want to have a professional blog where all of our people get their thoughts out for the industry and for their clients. So
Yeah.
a couple of things that's going on there.
I think it's amazing and it's really good because, I mean, putting a face or putting a personality to the name behind your firm is super important because that personality is really what defines your brand, right? So how you do that in these little 15-minute increments is super empowering. And I mean, someone who maybe works with her and she puts that information out there into the world. She just personalized and made her connection with your work incredibly personal because someone else probably has done something very similar to adopting dogs that are in need, that are maybe in kill shelters, they could really relate to. So you
Right.
just peeled back
Right.
that human barrier of how I get to know you and how I can connect with you on a personal level to make our professional relationship so much more fulfilling. And it's really, really important. Some firms do that really well. others don't. So props to you and bravo to you for kind of bringing that to the forefront, because that's what really seals the deal, is connecting those personal acumens together to be able to drive what your firm stands for. And the people that you work with can really relate to that, I'm sure. So that's amazing that you do that.
Yeah, and it's really and that's one of the other challenges, and something we've talked about previously too, is it's two birds with one stone. Yes, we're marketing our services and our people, but we're also giving a good flavor for our culture for recruiting, because that's a major problem in our industry right now. Is a lot more engineers are leaving engineering than are entering the field of engineering, and depending on where you read and the statistics you look at, I mean, this could be for another couple of decades where we have a labor shortage specifically within engineering. So, it's a really big challenge for engineering firms and frankly, probably architecture and construction firms as well, to hire enough people to get work done. And so by doing the Prairie Views, these interviews, we're letting people kind of get a sneak peek or a glimpse into the culture of our people and what it's like to work here. And so, yes, we're marketing the firm, but we're also putting stuff out there to try to encourage better recruiting, because we are growing and we need people just like so many other firms like us need people.
So, I mean, talking about that, because that's a huge topic of discussion. And in working with all these other architecture, engineering, and construction firms, recruitment is their biggest pain point. That is their biggest problem. And being
Right.
able to constantly recruit. What else are you guys doing to be able to kind of foster that?
So the way I mentioned this earlier, but we are a remote, hybrid, and work schedule flexible company. And so what that means, and that's a huge differentiator among our competitors, because a lot of our competitors are either not allowing remote work or they're allowing very limited remote work. They don't allow a lot of schedule flexibility at times. It's like 8 to 5 or 7 to 4 or whatever. But we really do honestly have a culture within our company that embraces remote, hybrid, and work schedule flexibility. And if you don't believe me, just go watch some of our videos on YouTube of our own people talking about their experiences of working at Prairie. So, and I think that's something that a lot of workers are interested in. They want to know that, like, if I need to go pick up my kiddo at school at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because they're sick or whatever, I can make up the difference later in the evening, or I can work a little bit Saturday, like that flexibility to be able to get your work done. And you're getting paid for the product that that you're putting out. You're not getting paid just to sit in a chair for between 8 and 5. You know what I mean? It's like we recognize the value of what you're bringing to the company is what we're paying for. And whether you bring that value to the company at 1 o'clock on Saturday morning or 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon is irrelevant. Now,
Totally.
there is some nuance to that, because if you have to work with teams and you obviously have to collaborate with other people, that does tie you down to some specific scheduling. But outside of that, really the schedule is yours.
That's amazing. And I mean, I'm sure that's a huge selling point, because again, in this era, especially with younger professionals, that is kind of a requirement. That's a requirement. And so if agencies and firms are not able to be flexible in that way, I bet you it's really hard for them to fill some of those open seats,
Right.
because, this younger generation, Gen Z and beyond, they require it. They require it. So, being able to appeal to some of them, you kind of got to be flexible in the way that you maneuver, in the way that they work. So, props to you and bravo to your firm for even embracing that now, especially as, the older generation begins to retire, Gen X and older begin to retire. Like, you're going to need to be able to appreciate that in some way, shape, or form. So that's really incredible that you guys do that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big differentiator that gets people interested in potentially working for firms like Prairie. I think the other thing is, it might be good to know that, a firm needs to be growing. I mean, there needs to be, for a number of reasons, but the firm I happen to be with, we're growing approximately about 20% in revenue annually, which is very fast. That's a fast growth pace. But we're doing that purposefully. We want to grow. And when you grow, opportunities for leadership, that org chart just gets bigger, right? You gotta hire more people to get more work done. And there's always opportunity for promotion and opportunity for leadership, and to get on that career growth track if that's something that you're interested in. That happens here. And the really cool thing is it's happening in an environment that's not putting those unspoken expectations on you of like working 60 hours a week,
Yeah.
and ignoring
Yeah.
all your kids' sports activities just so you can get a seat at the board, board of directors, or so you can, finally get into that C-suite role. Like, no, that's not a requirement here. You are really valued for what you produce. And if you can produce it in 40 hours, great. If you need 50 hours, that's up to you. But whatever it is that you need to produce what we're expecting, that's that's the expectation. Oh,
But that's refreshing, right? Like a lot of people, especially in this industry, are a little bit more rigid in that way. So again, I mean, props to your firm and Prairie Engineers for really embracing that. So I have a secondary question. Where like do you just serve the United States in general? Are you focused on specific states? Like, what does that look like from, being a semi-remote workforce? Who do you guys
right.
serve?
So, I mean, obviously, in the technical world we're in, you have to have an engineering license within the state that you're performing work, right?
Right.
Excuse me. If you're, so we have, I think, 35 licensed engineer, well, 35 states in which our engineers are licensed.
Wow.
And I think it's probably pretty close to that when it comes to the land surveyors as well. But we've done projects in Puerto Rico. We've done a project on a pier in San Francisco.
Okay.
We've done work in Michigan to Texas. We cover the United States pretty handily. Although I would say the vast majority, or the bulk of our work is within the Midwest, probably in the central time zone and a little bit into the eastern time zone.
Got it. Got it. So one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you is, with some of the technological advancements that the industry is really embracing and regarding the challenges like recruitment, retention, how is Prairie Engineers kind of addressing some of these technological advancement issues through your marketing and business development strategies? Is there anything attached to that when it comes to recruitment and retention? Or do you guys provide them a suite of, technological advancements that they're going to be able to use for their job? Or is there anything
Right.
that you guys are doing to be able to promote that?
Well, I think one, because we are a heavily remote workforce, our IT department is like second to none. They are just absolutely fantastic to support that flexible work environment that we have. So, for example, I sit here in Joplin, but I never have a production lag or a communication lag with anybody within my company's team, and that's due to our IT support and the great equipment that we get, and just the hard stuff that we get to be able to do our jobs every day. But beyond that, we're always looking at, they call it your tech stack, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's not one magic, software program out there that is all things to an engineering company. So, while we have project management and accounting software, and we have a CRM system, that tracks all of our client relationship management data, and we're, like most other firms, we're looking at all kinds of different AI solutions for
Yeah.
our data analytics, and understanding all the way from whether it's a design task, which is very security sensitive, right? You want to make sure it's accurate, you want to make sure and you still have to have a licensed professional seal whatever design plans have been created with or without any kind of AI assistance. But in the marketing world in particular, AI has been quite a game changer. I'm not afraid or ashamed to tell you I'm using ChatGPT and a lot of its kind of plug-in resources
Yeah.
almost every day.
Yeah.
It's like having another staff person on my team. It's like it can be my brainstorming staff to help me come up with great ideas for social media posts. It can be my content, editing staff that helps me look at content and adjust the grade, reading level and break it up into different types of structures. And I use another AI. Well, it's not an AI tool. It has AI in it. It's called Hemingway Editor. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've ever heard of the Hemingway Editor,
I
but
have.
I use it very regularly, which does have an AI component to it. So, we're looking at all those options, and that's just from my perspective. I mean, our hydrographic surveyors are using amazing technology every day, in a boat running up and down the Mississippi River, basically mapping the river bottom for navigable channels for all the goods and resources that get shipped up and down that river all the time. And that those companies are depending on the accuracy of our surveyors being able to make sure and get that right. And so all the technology that goes into that is just really, really fascinating and amazing.
That's awesome that your firm is really kind of embracing the AI. I mean, truth be told, if you're not embracing AI in 2025, you're probably in trouble. Like you need to figure out how to come to grips with how AI is really fostering and is going to continue to foster the innovation that we use to be able to drive business. Like you
Right.
got to do it. You got to do it. So, I mean, I think that that's amazing that you and your firm are really embracing some of that. It's almost
Well, you're
like
kind
a
of forcing it. You mean, kind of have
yeah,
to,
it's like
right?
a
I mean, if you're going to
prerequisite.
stay relevant, you really need to figure out how to use the newest and latest and greatest tools available.
Totally. So, one of the other things I wanted to ask you is you're new to Prairie
Mhm.
Engineers, right? You
Yes,
joined when in 2024?
I did in July of 24.
So, how have you been able to shape the firm's marketing and business development strategies to really align with its growth objectives? Because you mentioned that you guys are growing at a really fast rate. So, how are you shaping your marketing and your business development to really adapt to that?
So, a couple of ways to answer that question. The easiest and quickest way to answer that question is each of the markets that I mentioned earlier, federal, DOT, SLED, and utilities and industry, each of those have a market leader, somebody who's responsible for that market, for the development of that market, the growth of that market. And so
Okay.
I work with all four of those individuals when it comes to market planning. I mean, what conferences are they going to participate in? What kind of relationships do they have with their best clients? And what new clients do they have that they want to form better relationships with? And what prospective clients are out there that they have yet to form a relationship with? Sorry, excuse me, getting a little choked
That's a,
up.
that's okay.
Um, so I work with them and looking at their specific markets, doing research, looking at the data, looking how they've been performing, and helping them to create strategies for business development, and then arming them with the marketing collateral that they need from our team to be able to go out and sell those services within those markets. So that's one aspect of it. I'd say another aspect of it is once I landed at Prairie last July, like any other firm, you're going to have strengths and weaknesses within strategy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I saw very quickly is that there's just some really incredible people working at Prairie, and I needed to get a camera in front of them. I needed to interview them and really let them talk about what they do and their clients and their projects, which is a very difficult thing to do because usually most engineers and scientists are not
You're not camera
anxious to get in
friendly.
front of a camera,
No,
right?
no.
They don't
No,
want they
they're
don't want to talk
engineers.
publicly. They don't
Uh-uh.
like to present in front of a crowd. It's just not part of their nature. It's not their
No,
makeup.
no.
So trying to get over that hurdle and really encourage that and get people to participate in that, which actually I expected a little more of a challenge. I've been very pleasantly surprised at how many people have been willing to participate, excited to talk, excited to, I mean, not all of them are excited when I put the camera on them, but, after a few minutes, they kind of get into the flow and they get used to it and have a conversation and it works pretty well.
That's awesome. How are you able to kind of break that barrier? Generally, engineers in general, they're not, facing forward facing. They're not
Mhm.
extroverted. They're more introverted. I mean, how did you get through that? And how did you do that remotely?
So, just like you and I are talking right now on a platform and we can see each other across the screen, I'm doing that for Prairie Views. We have our Microsoft Teams platform and and that's the other thing. I think a lot of these engineers were already used to having conversations with the other person on a screen. And so just
Yeah.
recording that wasn't that big of a hurdle for them, because it's not like they're standing with like in a studio with all these lights blaring on them in a professional, video studio, right? It's you're sitting in your house and I'm sitting in my office and we don't have any kind of fancy studio lighting or anything, or we're just, we're having conversation, but we're recording
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so that wasn't a big leap for them, but I did do some that was more like we do have some studio in our Springfield, Illinois office. We did create a couple of little studio spaces and did do some more formal interviewing. And that was a little bit more of a challenge. And I had to be there for, a week and get people to come into that office and schedule them. But still, I think that went fairly well. One, because I think we just have good people that were willing to give it a shot. And number two, in my past life, I was a licensed therapist. So like,
Yeah.
if I can't figure out how to get people to talk comfortably, good grief, like what, why was I a therapist, right? So, there's some tools and tricks to, just making people feel comfortable, being approachable, being warm, being hospitable, letting them know we're just going to sit down and have a talk. And after those first few moments of anxiety pass, they settle in and they enjoy the conversation.
Can we circle back to that whole therapist discussion? I mean, how did you go from being a therapist to moving into architecture, engineering, construction? Like, I can imagine a more polar opposite career trajectory. How did this all formulate for you in your
So
in your
yeah,
career?
like I mentioned, my dad was an engineer, and so he had
Right.
his own company. And so from the time I was 13 years old, my summer job was always working on a land surveying crew, and I did that all the way through college. That was kind of my gig, my job. It was an easy job because it was my dad's company. But I never really took an interest in the technical aspects of engineering or land surveying. I knew a lot about it. I could be around it. I could talk about it, but doing it as a career choice just wasn't something that interested me. So I went into vocational Christian ministry, so like pastoral ministry within churches, and that's when I went back to school and got my master's degree in professional counseling and then opened up a practice. So while I was practicing privately as a therapist, I would help my dad with little marketing tasks for his company here and there. So go represent the company at a conference. Yeah, I'll take a couple days off, move my clients around and go to this conference and represent, tri-state engineering. Or if I had a slow docket one week and had a couple days where I didn't have very many clients, my dad would say, "Hey, we haven't talked to this public works director in this city over in Kansas in a while. Why don't you go over and visit with them and see if they've got anything coming up, that we could help them with?" So it was kind of one of those things where it was like, okay, Dad, I'll help you and I'll make a little extra money on the side. But then that eventually kind of over time morphed into something that was more of a career choice. Like, I really like this. I like going around and talking to folks about engineering, and I really like going to these conferences and representing this company. And um, so in 2009, I just decided to flip it. My dad and his management team asked if I would consider doing this more as a full-time deal. And I said, well, I'll give it a try. I'll sure give it a year at least. And if I don't like it, no hard
Yeah.
feelings, I'll walk away. But if I like it, I'll stick around. And I have stuck around. Now it's
That, that,
2025.
that's so awesome that you kind of found your passion in a little bit of a roundabout way, but you had your dad to be able to support that new discovery that you really like this industry. And speaking of the industry, I mean, what do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle for AEC firms to really have to overcome in 2025 when it comes to supporting sales and marketing and community engagement? Do you see any big hurdles that even your firm might need to think about wanting to overcome in 2025?
I think for 2025 and many years to come, again, it's going to be that labor shortage issue. It'll be interesting because right now, I think most folks are still fairly optimistic about the economy, fairly optimistic about the work that's coming out for infrastructure, which is what, engineers and companies like mine are always doing all the time. Water, sewer, roads, bridges, electricity. I mean, these are all things that we use and need every day, and all those systems, dilapidate over time if you don't take care of them or expand them or upgrade them, and so job security is not going to be a problem, I think, and finding work, marketing and finding
Yeah.
work is not going to be a real stretch or a real challenge. I really think the challenge is going to be filling in those engineering seats and those architect seats with people that can do the work. And that's really where I think we're focusing a lot of intentional thought about how do we operate, how do we structure ourselves to attract the best that we can find so that we can say yes to all the work that's going to be coming out.
Does your firm have some sort of, like an apprenticeship or a partnership with a college to be able to kind of intern for some of these incoming jobs? Do you guys do that or
We do.
focus
We
on
have a
that at all?
handful of universities in the Midwest that we have good relationships with that we recruit from, probably more just because of their location. They're
Yeah.
right here in the Midwest. Um, and we're developing more of a relationship with them. I think the hard part with that is, we love hiring new graduates. We love hiring folks that are new in their careers, but there's a cost benefit to that, right? I mean, it takes a little while to get them trained, to get them up and running, to get them licensed, to get them
Yeah.
independent and being able to work at a level that you really need them to work, which is totally worth it. But if that's all you're ever hiring, you get behind the eight ball. You get gaps in your organizational structure where you don't have as many project managers as you need, and you don't have people to fill in those discipline lead roles and those market lead roles. And, so the real struggle, I think, for a lot of firms is finding those 10, 12, 15-year seasoned designers, engineers
Okay.
to decide to come work for you instead of who they're working for right now.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
that's the challenge.
right. And that's kind of where the culture and the remote working and all of
Right,
those ancillary benefits really kind of set you above the rest when it comes to competition. So I can totally relate to that for sure. That's
right. And I
definitely,
think that's why we're doing a lot of what we're doing. And I know that, I'm the chief marketing officer, and this is a podcast about marketing. But I think as it concerns AEC industry, I think a lot of marketing teams are going to be leaned on pretty heavily for a while to really help their firms in their recruiting strategies. You're going to be marketing to future employees as much as you're marketing to clients and prospects, in my opinion.
yeah, I can totally relate to that. So I have one more question for you that I think is kind of the granddaddy. So what do you think are the emerging trends in AEC marketing, and what are you most excited about? And how do you think Prairie Engineers is going to prepare to leverage some of these trends for future success? I mean, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, what a big question.
No, it's a little bit of a loaded question, but no.
Yeah. So I think the emerging trends within marketing within AEC is going to be being able to wear multiple hats. Like I said, for the example I just gave, the labor market and the recruiting efforts. I think what AI is continuing to do can have just a tremendous impact in our day-to-day work. I mean, I mentioned it already. It's already impacted my day-to-day work as of
Yeah.
right now in January 2025. Level and sophistication of content that your marketing team should be able to produce with the help of AI should be quite enormous. So
I couldn't agree more.
so for example, if you're in marketing for an AEC company, not allowed to use AI or not allowed to understand or learn how to incorporate AI into your daily workflows, you're going to quickly fall behind the level of the quality and the quantity of content that your competitors are going to be able to put out. So I think staying engaged in that, understanding how we can get these things done in a very quick pace and still maintain a high level of quality is going to be a big driver.
That's amazing. And you're active in SMPS, right? Is
Yes.
SMPS like promoting any of that
Oh, yeah.
in their membership? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
absolutely. They've got a whole initiative when it comes to AI tools and technologies and understanding how that it can impact your workflow and what's available out there. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've lived long enough where I remember when the internet became a thing. Like I am that old. And I know, like I remember when was no, mass internet, and then there
yeah,
was, and
yeah,
I mean, the internet itself as an innovation created a completely new economy, right? A new way for
totally.
people to make money, a new way for people to be productive, a new way. I mean, it opened up so much possibility, right? Well, I think AI and quantum computing, which is the next thing right on the heels of AI, is going to be another one of those kinds of impacts on work and on the economy. So it's like, chatting with somebody in Australia in 1996 was really
Yeah,
cool. Be
yeah,
like, wow, I'm actually talking to somebody in Australia through my computer right now. This is amazing. And then shortly after that, you had Skype showing up, and it was like, oh, I can actually see that person in Australia while I'm talking to them. That's amazing. And now here you are sitting in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and I'm in Joplin, Missouri, and we're having this incredible conversation, and we're totally used to it. You and I this is like old hat. This is everyday
yeah.
stuff. And I think AI and quantum computing is heading in that direction. We're in the infancy of what's going to happen with that technology. And so learning how to embrace it, learning how to use it to the advantage of your company, learning how to use it for great marketing content. You better do it now, or else you're going to wake up and be like 10 years behind, which really is going to feel like 50 years behind.
Because we're moving so fast, right? Like
Right.
the amount that even the marketing industry is changing is just it's incredible. I feel like as a marketing professional, I'm having to almost reteach myself or learn new facets of what marketing is doing every single year in order just to be able to maintain and stay within the trajectory of like growth. It's incredible how fast things are moving, especially in marketing. So
Right.
I can definitely relate to that. That's crazy. Well, Gabe, it's been amazing chatting with you, and I am so excited to see what Prairie Engineers is going to come up with in this next facet of, innovation. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a great conversation, Shannon, and you asked some really good thought-provoking questions. I hope I delivered good content for you and your listeners. So yeah, I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's been great chatting with you.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it.